Hey everybody, Bucho here. Sorry for the delay in getting a new episode up. I've been super busy with work, and I had to get this new microphone here so that I could get some better sound on these videos, so you wouldn't have to worry about amping up your volume. So, today I am going to read from my first collection of stories, Scaring the Stars into Submission, available on Amazon. Link will be in the description below. The story I'm going to read today is called Trauerspielen, which is a German word meaning mourning plays, not like morning and afternoon, but like mourning as in someone's death. The thing about this piece is that it's not a single narrative. These are little vignettes or little pockets of time in the same world, sort of. Kind of a just me messing around with a narrative experiment. Trying to find some of the strangeness and just amplify it as much as possible. So I will pause between sections so that you know that I've moved on to a different section. I think there's something like 8 or 9 different pieces in here, but they're all they all have their own vibe, but they're all pretty strange. So he walks along the crater's edge, can feel its former heat glowing and filling him, penetrating and permeating his skin. The crater itself is deep and dark, a reminder of the concavity of man, the emptiness that comes and replaces selflessness so quickly and without apology. His ratty shoes, pockmarked with holes and crusted mud, skirt the talus-covered ground and send little rumblings of scree down the crater's slope. He watches the pebbles tumble down, each one racing after the others until finally they stop several hundred feet below, but nowhere near the center. He lets his gaze wander from the walls down to the epicenter, from the epicenter up to the far, much farther, crater's edge, and up to the gray-black horizon. A small red dot, a dying sun, pierces through the haze as if to keep itself relevant to those that would search it out and ask it for answers. The man turns, takes in the wasteland around him slowly, without judgment, and sits. His legs dangle over the edge, heels against the rock face. As he watches the pinhole of sunlight sink and disappear, he thinks and dreams. Scribbled on the concrete wall in neon yellow paint, "This is where you became something else," it says. Below that, "This is where we tried to stop you." Below that, a place for flowers and candles, notes of grieving and want. Images of the past, cut and pasted to the wall, are faded and torn by the elements. Beads hung draped over tarnished candelabras and framed pictures. Tokens of remembrance, unread letters filled with rage and questions. On the ground, the place where tears fell and dried. The child floated out to sea like some kind of Moses, some kind of Perseus, a sacrificial lamb given up to malevolent gods. The nubile skin drank of the sun, felt its warmth soaking up every pore deeply, riding along his tiny veins and heating up the arterial passages far below the surface. What malevolence these gods had for men was for them alone. The child's skin remained a crisp, cool tone. Rosy blossoms of color sprouted on his cheeks, but only when he squinted up during the midday and cried with enough force to silence the gulls gliding by. When night came, swallowed up by the day, the infant's peals fell silent. The stars were lullaby, the moon a light to keep full darkness at bay. The soft lapping of waves below and around rocked the child into rhythmic slumber and gave way to dreams of unknown things with unknown names, all towering over the childlike giants. A woman with wings and old leathery skin whispers to him in the dark. Her breath, hot like ash, tickles the lobe and courses through his body like quickly moving fog. "This is how the world began," she says. One breath spread across a nothing landscape, rolling up and over itself, curdling and giving life at the same time. Do you think it will end the same? He stands, unable to move, as if planted firmly in stiff molasses. He can hear the woman's lips at his ears, moist and dangerous, her breath even and measured. You walk into the world alone, but leave carrying the ghosts of those who've already gone. How many more will you carry before the weight finally presses your face into the dead earth? You are no Charon. She steps in front of him, looks him up and down before placing a gnarled finger against his chest. She pushes. He falls back into the smothering dark. Her voice, a whisper, fills his mind. Unburden yourself. Give up the ghosts. Elsewhere, the world glistened tundra. She is motionless and underwater. The seaweed swirls around her with its tendril arms, wraps around her ankles and moves up, tightens around her thighs. Lilies blossom up from the tips, tickle her bare stomach and chest before opening up completely near her mouth. The petals quiver and slide against her lips. The stamen tickle her tongue. In the moment, she feels as if she is kissing the soul of her reflection. Petals are lips, lips are petals. Flower is woman, woman is flower. Still, the sea rages on as the seaweed dances with her in the depths of the dark. The embrace ends, the kelpie grasp loosens and leaves her to sink to the bottom. Her feet slip easily into the silt below, feels the grit and grime slide beneath toenails. She is breathing water. She finds this natural and not at all strange. Above, the waters rage beneath a blackened sky filled with electricity and thunder. She cannot hear the sky crack and crumble, but the ocean lights up briefly with each fractured branch of light that follows. It is then she realizes there are no fish. None. The seaweed fingers do not come back to dance with her. The teenager's eyes are broken, covered in a milky film since birth. He has wandered into a vacant building he has visited over and over since gaining the confidence to explore the world on his own. He has run his frail fingers over the edge of nearly every surface, felt each crack and crumble, felt each new coat of graffiti, every bit of exposed and rusted rebar jutting out into the unseen air. The silent walls seem to breathe for him, and him alone, because he pays attention. He and the concrete make a connection the way the seeing can never know. His fingerprints know the taste of rust and ruin. The gentle curves of his palms pass across rough cement, dried paper paste, faded and curled posters. He mistakes the craters of bullet holes for decay until he feels the crumpled metal of bullets crushed within the wall. The paper paste becomes dried blood. The life of someone past rests upon his fingertips. He is reading obituaries in the foundation, speaking private eulogies in silence for the unknown victims. A family of birds nested in the upper crevice of broken ceiling squawks before filing silent. A stranger he does not hear arrive, stands behind a support column and waits, watches. The teenager will not leave the building today. He will become another death certificate painted on the wall. I am the rock face, the culmination of the world's age, the sediment of eons pressed together by time, movement, and gravity. I am that which breaks the skin and scrapes the bones. I have tasted generations of blood, kept the remnants in pockets of amber and solitude. I have seen the sweeping away of civilizations, the propagation of new ones, themselves swept away and replaced 100 times over. The lessons never change. The people never learn. I am the erosion, the unseen forces of wind and water nibbling away at the edges. I am the drown and the suffocation, the choke and the asphyxiation. I am the weightlessness of tides. I am the unstoppable force of displacement. I am the pebble moved from great heights. I am the divot carved in earthstone. I am the scree and detritus blown across hardpan. I am the whisper you never truly see, never truly hear. I am the song, the spirit, and the silence. I am that which moves between worlds effortlessly, the first breath of life and the final exhalation in death. I am the music of the newly birthed child's scream, the proclamation of life's arrival. I am the notion, the idea, the halo and the horns. I am the sound of leaves on limbs in the wind. I am the sound of clouds passing overhead. I am the tune the sun hums as it sinks below the horizon. I am the cacophony of starlight, the chaos of a silent winter day. I am the wisp of snowflake falling onto tongue. I am the discordant tune of thaw in the spring. I am melt. I could feel the cold muzzle against my head, could feel it leaving its round cylinder mark, a divot in my skin. They asked and I could not answer. They asked again and I still could not answer. They kicked my legs out from beneath me and I fell to the floor, knees knocking against the concrete. I could not remember my father's name. The memory was a faded yellow photograph. I could not remember the color of his eyes. The memory was fuzz, a circle out of focus. I could not remember his brand of cigarettes. The memory smelled of shoe leather and cancer. I could not remember how he smelled. The memory tickled my nose, but no more. I could not remember how he held me as a child. The memory was placental and ancient. I could not remember his teachings. The words were garble, encoded and unbreakable. I could not remember. Bang. I woke up covered in lichen, smothered in moss, my limbs rusted, metallic and stiff. Through the copse of tree boughs above, I could see unnameable, unplaceable constellations that made no sense, had no memory. Like movement, the sky was revisionist history to be relearned. A murder of crows sat perched on the lowest limbs, tilted their heads at me, pretended to be vulture. What skin lay bare to the night air prickled and shivered. I could see a splotchy moon to my left, bright like a dying bulb through the leaves. I never saw it smile the way others claimed. From the leaves fell a torrent of insects, the husks of ladybugs, cicadas, crickets, and moths no longer fluttering. Death pitter-pattered all around me, covered my limbs and found its way to choke me. I felt the hard scrabble of tiny legs and antennae against the walls of my throat, imagined sacks of unborn laid into my stomach wall. I fell into shock, felt my body turn in on itself. My eyelids became movie screens, flashing nebulas of knotted, angry veins against a field of embryonic skin. I latched onto dendrite, gripped axon, rode synapse to the always watchful self below the surface that spoke only in deep. I cannot remember what we spoke about. You found yourself wandering through the tunnels of an old train station. The tracks had been corroded brown and dying blades of grass grew along the rails. Ahead you could see a platform bathed in the greenish sunrise filtered through the broken brick and missing mortar of the opposite wall. The chunks of cement glowed like neon, like heavy emeralds in the warmth. They seemed to keep your path well lit, though you knew this was false in every way. You walked on, followed the tracks to the end of the platform and jumped up, and took the long upward sloping path out. You could not hear the voices of the dead, but you imagined them echoing off the walls as if they'd just exited the trains. You could smell coffee and urine, could hear the jingle-jangle of money and guitar strings, could see the swarming mass of heavy coats and umbrellas moving up and down this corridor. The green sunrise had turned orange up at the exit, turned bright. You turned your head away, back towards the platform behind you, and saw a dual-headed deer, the antlers of both heads intertwined together so that the two faces worked in tandem. Both mouths chewed silently and stared at you. The quivering sigh of a napping infant, the soft rustling of fingers through hair, the vibration of the hummingbird, the gentle shifting of leaf-heavy tree limbs, the slow ripple of water against submerged boulder, the light kiss planted on sleeping lover's shoulder, the lifting of gulls in mid-glide, the scattering of dandelion seeds across a meadow, the sound of bloom as petals unfurled, the sound of fallout happening 3 counties over. The grandmother lit candles in the windows to keep the memories at bay. She kept the fire stoked in the hearth to keep the ghosts from leaving. She set the kitchen sink on fire and kept it roaring while she slept, for fear the nightmares would creep up from the darkness through the pipes and finally steal her away. She soaked the door jambs and hinges with gasoline, lighter fluid, grain alcohol, gunpowder. She singed the hems of all her dresses as they hung in the closet, hoped the char and ash would make her a protection charm against the things she could not see, but hovered around her every hour of every day. The electric blankets were turned up high, mottled and blistered her skin as she slept, but she would wake in the morning, and that was proof that it was right. She would sleep in fire, she would dream of fire, she would walk, awake, with thoughts of fire, and smoke and feel her lungs close up in fear of the things the fire kept away. She made necklaces of matches, earrings from the flammable tips. She hung wind chimes made of old grenade pins and hung them around the porch to ward off the beasts she saw in dreams. She made lamps of propane tanks and welding equipment, took baths in paint thinner and sulfur. The man came to on the peak of a rumbling mountain. He did not remember climbing. Carrion birds circled overhead, silent and waiting. He felt the breeze of high altitude pass through him, but did not feel its chill. His limbs had become ice, his fingers stiff and crystalline. He ran his awkward hand along thigh, felt it slick and stick against the frost of his new form. He gleamed in the sun, a reflective beacon for anyone paying attention. He was glimmer, he was shine. His breath froze on the air before him, cracked, tinkled to the ground like a dying song. He tried to speak, wanted to hear what broken silence sounded like, and only heard the slide of ice against ice erupt from his throat. She gnaws on her fingertips, aching to taste the lives she's touched. Her tongue rungs along the whorls of her skin, the ridges and valleys that make up her identity. She can taste the decay clinging to the print, can taste the ruin caked up beneath the nails. She chews each nail off, spits it to the ground, lets her fingers bleed thick and goopy to the ground. The blood pools around her like a protective barrier. She can feel it against her toes, her soles. She will leave footprints wherever she goes. She will leave a bloody trail behind her, each toe and heel marked bright against the blackened ground. On the long desk, beakers and tubes bubbled and frothed in a menagerie of shadowy murky color. Tiny flames danced below the glass, turned on high and made to look like they alone held the equipment aloft. On the countertop below, a flurry of papers, documents, covered in scribbles, notations, and equations, the work of a sleepless mind and restless hands. On the shelves lining the room, tall glassware filled with formaldehyde and failed experiments stood watch. The contents of the jars. One rubber ball, colorless and rotting from the inside out, bits of particulate floating near the top. This water is a greenish yellow. The heads of two dolls, an image of unthinking, unblinking mermaids drowned in the deep. The water is the color of bruise. A hand, missing the thumb and the pinky. This water is a bright, unnatural blue. Unknown. The water is thick and gray like ashen snowfall. The ears and snouts of pigs, wrinkled and tough. This water is the color of oxygenated blood or lust. A silver ribbon, lilting, beautiful and frayed. This water is clear like the glass it floats inside. Thanks. If you like what you're hearing, subscribe. I'm hoping to be back on to a weekly basis of uploading these little readings. I hope you like what you hear. I hope you buy a copy of the book. Yep. Have a good one.